The Household of Faith would like to invite you to worship with us. Worship services are held at the Indiana University Northwest Library Conference Center, room LC 110. For more information, please visit www.IsraelTeach.com.
All praise be to the Most High God, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and peace to you in the mighty name of Jesus. Count it a blessing to stand before you today. I always count it a blessing to stand before you. And I'm also thankful because I know where I was in regard to my worship, and I know where I am now. And I know that the God I serve is the true and living God, the God of my ancestors Israel, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And to know Him, and to know what He requires, I am truly thankful. I count it a blessing. If He doesn't do anything else for me, He's done enough. Again, I'm truly thankful because I know where I was. Me and my wife were talking last night about just the madness of this world, and I was once a part of that madness, caught up in the same types of worship, just like many of our people today. However, the Lord, God of this creation, has been calling us, even when He first brought us out by a mighty hand out of Egypt. He's been calling us to worship Him properly. Because there's one thing about this God that I serve, that we all serve. You can't worship Him how you want to worship Him. He's given you criteria in which we are to follow. And one thing about our people, we never got it. We never got it. And when we read the scripture, we often think that couldn't be me. But if you really think about it, those people actually saw the miracles of God. They saw the parting of the Red Sea. They saw a mighty nation, the mightiest nation on the planet at that time, brought to its knees. They saw it. They saw God come down on a mountain, and they still went astray. So even though we don't keep the false customs of this world and in the time in which we live in, of America, the country where we live, it's important to even deal with what's going on because we don't exist in a vacuum. These things are so pervasive that we need to deal with them. We need to understand where the false customs come from. We need to understand what our ancestors did so that we don't fall into the same trap. The title of this lesson is, "Come Out of Her, My People." This is the cry that God has been saying from the very beginning. Come out of her. Even when you look at Abraham, come walk before me and be thou perfect. Come out. Come out from among the people you are with. Even with Jacob, He did the same thing, and He did it with Israel, and He's done it with you even in this time. See yourself in the scriptures, because we are those people, and we are in the same condition, living in a world that is mad, that is upside down, full of false worship, trying to walk the right way. Let's go to John, the 4th chapter. Again, the title of this lesson is, "Come Out of Her, My People." He's calling us to come out. John 4:24. During the course of this lesson, I just want to point out, we're going to see the demise of a people because they continued or were unable to discontinue false worship. We're going to see the consequences of it. And we're going to see the current condition that we live in and see that they were living, many of our ancestors were living in the same exact condition. Surrounded by false worship. But again, He's asking us to come out of that. This is John, the 4th chapter and the 19th verse. And when you're there, go ahead.
The woman said unto him, "Sir, I perceive that thou art a prophet."
We're all familiar with this. This is the woman at the well with Jesus. He asked her to draw water. And she said, "Look, your people had no dealings with us." Okay? Because she was one of the people that were put in the land of Samaria, when the Assyrians conquered the 10 tribes. So she said, the woman said unto him, "Sir, I perceive that thou art a prophet," because he told her something about herself that he couldn't possibly know unless he was dealing with something else outside of what is human. But go ahead, verse 20.
"Our fathers worship in this mountain, and ye say that in Jerusalem is the place where man ought to worship."
So she thought she was actually one of Jacob's children. She said, our fathers worshipped in this mountain, and ye say that in Jerusalem is the place where men ought to worship. What did Jesus tell her?
Jesus said unto her, Woman, believe me, the hour coming, when ye shall neither in this mountain, nor yet at Jerusalem worship the Father.
So it's going to come a time. He said, well, the hour cometh when ye shall neither in this mountain, nor yet at Jerusalem worship the Father. Then what did he say? That we should all take heed to. Go ahead.
Ye worship, ye know not what.
Ye worship, ye know not what. You don't know what you worship. Go ahead.
We know what we worship. For salvation is of the Jews.
For salvation is of the Jews. How to get salvation from God was given to our ancestors. He said, ye worship, ye know not what. We know what we worship, for salvation is of the Jews. Go ahead.
For the hour coming, and now is, when the true worshippers shall worship the Father in spirit and in truth. For the Father seeketh such to worship him. God is a spirit.
Go ahead.
They that worship him must worship him in spirit and in truth.
And that's what we need to understand. And we understand it and continue in it. God is a spirit, and they that worship him must worship him in spirit and in truth. You cannot worship God any type of way. You can't take his word and change it. Let's go to Romans and find out what was given to our ancestors. Because he manifested out himself to our ancestors. Nobody else. So Amos says, only you have I known throughout all the nations of the earth. Therefore I will punish you for all your iniquity, for your false worship. This is Romans 3 and verse 1. And when you're there, go ahead.
What advantage then hath the Jew?
So what advantage is there of being a Jew? Go ahead.
Well, what profit is there of circumcision? Much every way, chiefly because that unto them were committed the oracles of God.
So he said, what advantage is it of being a Jew? Or what profit is it of being in that covenant? That same one that Abraham made with God. He said, Paul says, much every way chiefly because that unto them were committed the oracles of God, the laws, the statutes, the commandments, the criteria that we are to follow was given to our ancestors by God. How to be saved. Salvation is of the Jews. That was given to our ancestors. That's the benefit. Let's go to Psalms. Let's go to Psalms. The 147th division. He only dealt with this in this manner with one people. The 147th division of Psalms. And this is verse 19. And when you there, go ahead.
He showed his word unto Jacob.
So he showed his word unto Jacob. Go ahead.
His statutes and his judgments unto Israel.
That's who he showed it to. Go ahead.
He had not dealt so with any nation. And as for his judgments, they have not known them.
He said, and as for his judgments, they have not known them. But that's who he's dealing with. And he's calling us to be sanctified. He's calling us to be sanctified in a world of darkness. Let's go to Deuteronomy. Let's go to Deuteronomy. Because again, I want to show you what he's done for people. And the reaction of the people. The consequences for what they've done. Their false worship. He told them something here. This is Deuteronomy 4. I'm getting ahead of myself. Deuteronomy 4 and verse 1. When you're there, go ahead.
Therefore hearken, O Israel, unto the statutes and unto the judgments which I teach you.
So he's saying, take heed to what I've given you. Go ahead.
For to do them, that ye may live and go in and possess the land which the Lord God of your fathers giveth you.
Again, he brought this people, slaves out of Egypt to possess a land, the land of Canaan. And what did he say? Can we add anything to what he's given us?
You should not add unto the word which I command you. Neither shall ye diminish aught from it. That ye may keep the commandments of the Lord your God, which I command you.
So don't add and don't take away. Don't add and take away. The Lord doesn't need any help. We might need help when we write something, or do something, or say something. He does not need any help from us. He is God. So it said, ye shall not add unto the word which I command you, neither shall ye diminish aught from it. Because anything, if you take away or you add to, you adulterated the word. He says, ye may not ye may not add nor take away from it, that ye may keep the commandments of the Lord your God, which I command you. Go ahead.
Your eyes have seen what the Lord did because of Baal Peor. For all the men that followed Baal Peor, the Lord thy God had destroyed them from among you.
And you would think we would take heed because we saw what God did to Egypt. We saw what God did to those who worship falsely. He destroyed them. He said, your eyes have seen what the Lord did because of Baal Peor. For all the men that followed Baal Peor, the Lord thy God have destroyed them from among you. You would think we would take heed, but we failed to do it. But keep reading.
But ye that did cleave unto the Lord your God are alive, every one of you this day.
So that should let you know that's common sense. If you cleave to God and do what he says, you will live. But if you don't, you will die. Verse 5.
Behold, I have taught you statutes and judgments, even as the Lord my God commanded me, that ye should do so in the land whither ye should go to possess it.
Go ahead.
Keep therefore and do them.
For what is this?
For this is your wisdom and your understanding in the sight of the nations, which shall hear all these statutes and say, surely this great nation is a wise and understanding people.
So greatness in Israel was not in Israel itself, but rather what Israel was doing or what they were following. The laws, the statutes, and the commandments of God. And other nations were supposed to look at us as an example. We were to look at them as an example. We were not to take the customs of other people and traditions of other people who worship falsely. He said, keep therefore and do them, for this is your wisdom and your understanding in the sight of the nations, which shall hear all these statutes and say, surely this great nation is a wise and understanding people. Go ahead, verse 7.
For what nation is there so great, who had God so nigh unto them, as the Lord our God is in all things that we call upon him for?
Who or what other nations knew God? None of them knew God. That's why they worship the sun, and that's why they worship the moon, because they didn't know God. They were not near to God, had no true idea of what God or who God was. God did not manifest himself unto them. What nation is there so great who hath God so nigh unto them, as the Lord our God is in all things that we call upon him for? Verse 8.
And what nation is there so great that hath statutes and judgments so righteous as all this law, which I set before you this day?
Go ahead, verse 9.
Only take heed to thyself.
I'm warning you, go ahead.
And keep thy soul diligently, lest thou forget the things which thine eyes have seen, and lest I depart from thy heart all the days of thy life, which teach them thy sons and thy sons' sons.
So not only are you supposed to take hold of it, but you're supposed to impart it on your children. Only take heed to thyself and keep thy soul diligently. And that's what we need to do. Diligently deal with God's word. Diligently and appropriately worship him. Lest thou forget the things which thine eyes have seen, lest you forget all that you have seen. And we as a nation have truly forgotten even who we are. Unless they depart from thy heart all the days of thy life, but teach them unto thy sons and thy sons' son. Deuteronomy verse 7, or chapter 7. Because we see God is a spirit. We see how he was supposed to be worshipped. He manifested himself unto Israel, and he required them to do something. Deuteronomy 7 and verse 1. And when you're there, go ahead.
When the Lord thy God shall bring thee into the land whither thou goest to possess it.
He made a covenant with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob about this land. He said, when I bring you into this land that's full of other people. Go ahead.
And has cast out many nations before thee.
I'm casting out those people. Go ahead.
The Hittites and the Girgashites, and the Amorites and the Canaanites, the Perizzites and the Hivites, and the Jebusites, 7 nations greater and mightier than thou.
I am your strength. I am fighting these wars for you. I am going to disperse all these people and give you the land, even though they're mightier than you. Go ahead.
And when the Lord thy God shall deliver them before thee, thou shalt smite them and utterly destroy them. Thou shalt make no covenant with them, no sure mercy unto them.
So he said, totally destroy these people, which Israel failed to do. But totally destroy these people. Tear down, make no covenant with them. Go ahead.
Neither shalt thou make marriages with them.
Don't marry them. Go ahead.
Thy daughter thou shalt not give unto his son, nor his daughter shalt thou take unto thy son.
Is this got something to do with racism? What is this really about? Verse 4.
For they will turn away thy son from following me, that they may serve other gods.
That same son that you were supposed to teach the law, statutes, and commandments of God, they'll turn that son away from following me. So don't let your sons marry their daughters, nor your daughters their sons. For they will turn away thy son from following me, that yet may serve other gods. Go ahead.
So will the anger of the Lord be kindled against you.
And if you serve other gods, I'm going to be angry. Go ahead.
And destroy thee suddenly.
And you are going to be destroyed. But how should you deal with the altars? Should you take them and use them? What should you do with them?
Well, thus shall ye deal with them.
Because that's, go ahead.
Ye shall destroy their altars, and break down their images, and cut down their groves, and burn their graven images with fire.
All of that is pagan. All of it is idolatrous. All of it is false worship. That's what it's used for. So destroy it. Don't have anything to do with it. Be sanctified. That's what he's calling us to do. Verse 6.
For thou art a holy people unto the Lord thy God.
Go ahead.
The Lord thy God has chosen thee to be a special people unto himself, above all people that are upon the face of the earth.
So I've chosen you upon all the nations of the earth. You weren't better than anybody else. When he found us, we were in our own blood. We were a slave in Egypt. He said, but I've sanctified you. He gave us everything we would need to be holy. He gave us his word. He gave us what we would need to be prosperous. And he gave us a way and method in order to worship him. Let's find out what our mindset was. Let's go to Deuteronomy tonight. Verse 7. Thank you. Go ahead.
The Lord did not set his love upon you, nor choose you, because ye were more in number than any people, for ye were the fewest of all people.
Go ahead, read verse 8.
But because the Lord loved you, and because he would keep the oath which he has sworn unto your fathers, had the Lord brought you out with a mighty hand, and redeemed you out of the house of bondmen, from the hand of Pharaoh, king of Egypt.
So let's see what our mindset was after that great deliverance. Let's see what our mindset was. Deuteronomy 9. Deuteronomy 9 and verse 1. Here Israel is on the cusp of entering that land. Go ahead.
Hear, O Israel, that art to pass over Jordan this day, to go in to possess nations greater and mightier than thyself, cities great and fenced up to heaven.
Verse 6. Skip down to verse 6.
Understand, therefore, that the Lord thy God giveth thee not this good land to possess it for thy righteousness, for thou art a stiff-necked people.
It's not for your righteousness, Israel, because you're a stiff-necked people. But go ahead.
Remember and forget not how thou provokest the Lord thy God to wrath in the wilderness, from the day that thou didst depart of the land of Egypt, until ye came unto this place. You have been rebellious against the Lord.
So that's been the heart of Israel, a rebellious, stiff-necked people. Been rebellious, refusing to take heed to what thus saith the Lord. But go ahead.
Also in Horeb, ye provoked the Lord to wrath, so that the Lord was angry with you, to have destroyed you.
So much so that he was going to destroy the people. Go ahead.
When I was gone up into the mount to receive the tables of stone, even the tables of the covenant, which the Lord made with you. Then I abode in the mount 40 days and 40 nights. I neither did eat bread nor drink water.
It didn't take long before Israel went astray. Moses was gone but for a short while. 40 days and 40 nights communing with God, getting instruction from God on how to deal with his people. And while he was up there, they went astray. Verse 12.
And the Lord said unto me, Arise, get thee down quickly from hence. For thy people which thou hast brought forth out of Egypt have corrupted themselves.
How have they corrupted themselves? Go ahead.
They are quickly turned aside out of the way which I commanded them. They have made them a molten image.
So immediately they made them a molten image. They made them a golden calf. Where did they get that from? That's what they have been dealing with in Egypt. They deal with bulls in Egypt, so thus they make a golden calf. Again, false worship. But that's the mindset of our people, even right after he delivered us. But let's go to verse 24 and read.
Ye have been rebellious against the Lord from the day that I knew you.
From the day that I knew you, from day one, you've been a rebel. Verse 25.
Thus I fell down before the Lord 40 days and 40 nights, as I fell down at the first, because the Lord had said he would destroy you. I prayed therefore unto the Lord and said,
I interceded. Go ahead.
And said, O Lord God, destroy not thy people and thine inheritance, which thou hast redeemed through thy greatness, which thou hast brought forth out of Egypt with a mighty hand.
So he was constantly interceding for the people. But that's the mindset of the people. Let's go to 1 Kings. Because we'll see that with all the instruction, with the laws, the statutes, the commandments, the judgments that were given to Israel, Israel still went astray. Did the complete opposite of what they were supposed to do. What we were supposed to do as a people. And we'll see the consequences of it. This is 1 Kings, the 11th chapter. Because the Lord did bring Israel into that land. And they were able to establish themselves and make a great kingdom. The pinnacle of that kingdom was in the days of David and Solomon. The height of that kingdom. But here comes failure. 1 Kings 11 and verse 1. And when you're there, you can go ahead.
But King Solomon loved many strange women, together with the daughter of Pharaoh, women of the Moabites, Ammonites, Edomites, Zidonians, and Hittites.
Some of those same nations that we read in Deuteronomy the 7th chapter, the Lord said, make no marriages with them, for they will turn you away from your God. The same peoples. Verse 2.
Of the nations concerning which the Lord said unto the children of Israel, ye shall not go into them, neither shall they come in unto you. For surely they will turn away your heart after their gods. Solomon clave unto these in love.
So in this instance, he loved them more than he loved God. In his old age, he became weak as well. Keep reading.
And he had 700 wives, princesses, and 300 concubines. And his wives turned away his heart. For it came to pass when Solomon was old, that his wives turned away his heart after other gods. And his heart was not perfect with the Lord his God, as was the heart of David his father.
And thus, because his heart was not perfect with God, what did he do?
But Solomon went after Astoreth, the goddess of the Sidonians, and after Milcom, the abomination of the Ammonites.
Go ahead.
And Solomon did evil in the sight of the Lord, and went not fully after the Lord, as did David his father.
And what was the consequence? Oh, keep going, verse 7.
Then did Solomon build an high place for Shemosh, the abomination of Moab, in the hill that is before Jerusalem, and for Molech, the abomination of the children of Ammon.
So he starts building these false edifices to these false gods. Okay, that's where you see a lot of the start of the false worship. Wholesale. Verse 8.
And likewise he did for all his strange wives, which burnt incense and sacrificed unto their gods.
Go ahead, verse 9.
And the Lord was angry with Solomon, because his heart was turned from the Lord God of Israel, which had appeared unto him twice.
And just as Israel, he didn't destroy them, just at that moment because he had made a covenant. He didn't destroy him because of David. But keep reading.
And had commanded him concerning this thing, that he should not go after other gods. But he kept not that which the Lord commanded. Wherefore the Lord said unto Solomon, for as much as this is done of thee, and thou hast not kept my covenant and my statutes, which I have commanded thee, I will surely rend the kingdom from thee, and will give it to thy servant.
So thus, I'm going to rend the kingdom, I'm going to take the kingdom from you. The kingdom's going to be split, and I'm going to give it to your servant. All right? This starts the demise. What's the demise of Israel, us as a people based on, or a consequence from, is false worship. False worship. That's it. Let's go to 1 Kings 12 and 25. Because this continued. Again, this led to the demise of us as a people. That's why it's important to look at it. 1 Kings 12 and 25. When you're there, you can go ahead, because we're going to see this servant of Solomon. Go ahead.
Then Jeroboam built Shechem and Mount Ephraim, and dwelt therein, and went out from thence and built Peniel. And Jeroboam said in his heart, now shall the kingdom return to the house of David, if this people go up to do sacrifice in the house of the Lord at Jerusalem.
So he was afraid that that part of the kingdom, those 10 tribes, because it was split. You had Judah and Benjamin, that was the southern tribe, or southern kingdom, and you had all the other 10 that were part of the northern kingdom. You had Rehoboam, Solomon's son, that was the king, and you had Jeroboam. This was the adversary. That kingdom was split. Now, Israel all had to go up to Jerusalem 3 times a year. The males especially had to go up and worship. Now, Jeroboam got in his mind, he said, if they go up and worship, they're going to turn back to the house of David. So what was his thought?
Then shall the heart of this people turn again unto the Lord, even unto Rehoboam, king of Judah. And they shall kill me, and go again to Rehoboam, king of Judah.
So what did he do?
Whereupon the king took counsel, and made 2 calves of gold, and said unto them, it is too much for you to go up to Jerusalem. Behold thy gods, O Israel, which brought thee up out of the land of Egypt.
That same mistake that we made right when we came out of Egypt, making the golden calf, he did the same thing. He said, whereupon the king took counsel. He actually talked to some advisors before he did this foolishness. He made 2 calves of gold and said unto them, it is too much for you to go to Jerusalem. Behold thy gods, O Israel, which brought thee up out of the land of Egypt. He didn't realize, and they said that in Egypt. Behold thy gods. He didn't understand. Israel didn't understand as a people that God gave you what you got. He gave you what you have. Why worship falsely? Why worship something that you have to make with your hands? But this is a spiritual disease amongst our people. He said, whereupon the kings took counsel and made 2 calves of gold and said unto them, it is too much for you to go to Jerusalem. Behold thy gods, O Israel, which brought thee up out of the land of Egypt. Go ahead.
And he set the one in Bethel, and the other put he in Dan.
So he put these 2 golden calves in Bethel, one in Bethel and one in Dan, and go ahead.
And this thing became a sin, for the people went to worship before the one, even unto Dan.
Yes, it's a sin because the Lord said, had no other gods before me, but go ahead.
And he made an house of high places, and made priests of the lords of the people, which were not of the sons of Levi.
So he did all this to avoid having his kingdom taken, the one that God actually gave him to. Gave it to him. It says, and this became a sin, and he made high places. He's making places of worship, and made priests of the lowest of the people, just like we see amongst our people today. The priests or the pastors are the lowest of the people. But go ahead.
And Jeroboam ordained the feast in the 8th month, on the 15th day of the month, like unto the feast that is in Judah. So just like they were supposed to go up and worship that, he's making his own feast. We read you're not supposed to add anything to take off from the word of God. Go ahead. And he offered upon the altar. So did he in Bethel, sacrificing unto the calves that he had made. And he placed in Bethel the priests of the high places which he had made. So he set up this false system of worship, verse 33. So he offered upon the altar which he had made in Bethel, the 15th day of the 8th month, even in the month which he had devised of his own heart, and ordained a feast unto the children of Israel, and he offered upon the altar and burnt incense. So we saw the origins of it when we came out of Egypt, and we saw it sprout up again with Solomon, and now you see this Jeroboam going wholesale off some false worship. Let's go to Hosea. Years later, this stuff is still in place, and you have to think about it. These things, once they start, they're in place so long. People are born, and then they're born into a situation, and that's the kind of worship they see. Just like us, born into a situation, and that's the kind of worship we see. We see our parents, the children of 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 the children that came out of Egypt. We born into the world, and we think this is just how things are supposed to be. That is not how things are supposed to be. And I thank God that I know that. Because it could have been me. Because I was at one time worshiping falsely. Couldn't wait for Christmas. Couldn't wait for Easter. That was the custom. But this is Hosea the 10th chapter and verse 1. See yourself in the scriptures. Imagine being born into this. They had the same exact situation that we have today.
Hosea 10 and verse 1. When you're there, go ahead.
Israel is an empty vine.
She's still an empty vine. Go ahead.
He bringeth forth fruit unto himself.
Uh-huh.
According to the multitude of his fruit, he has increased the altars. According to the goodness of his land, they have made goodly images.
Go ahead.
Their heart is divided.
Uh-huh.
Now shall they be found faulty. He shall break down their altars. He shall spoil their images.
Keep going, because they've made all these false places of worship. Go ahead.
For now they shall say, we have no king, because we feared not the Lord. What then shall a king do to us?
Uh-huh.
They have spoken words, swearing falsely, and making a covenant. Thus judgment springeth up as hemlock in the furrows of the field.
So because of your falsehood, judgment is coming. And the Lord in his mercy was constantly sending prophets to tell you this. Go ahead.
The inhabitants of Samaria shall fear because of the calves of Bethlehem.
So years later, they still had these calves. Still worshiping these calves. Still worshiping falsely. The inhabitants of Samaria shall fear because of the calves of Bethlehem. Go ahead.
For the people thereof shall mourn over it,
Uh-huh.
and the priests thereof that rejoiced on it, for the glory thereof, because it is departed from it.
Go ahead.
It shall be also carried unto Assyria for a present to King Jereb.
So here we see the consequence of your sin. You see judgment for false worship. That's what happens. See, we must realize that it's not your military, it's not your money. By God's will, you exist and thrive, or you die and you don't thrive. It's by God that happens. That's what we fail to realize as a people. It wasn't from anything we did or who we were. It said the inhabitants of Samaria shall fear because of the calves, for the people thereof shall mourn over it, and the priests thereof that rejoiced on it for the glory thereof, because it is departed from it. And you're going to be carried away into Assyria. This is the northern kingdom now. For a present, or those calves rather, shall be carried away unto Assyria for a present to King Jereb. Go ahead.
Ephraim shall receive shame.
So you're going to receive shame for your false worship. Go ahead.
And Israel shall be ashamed of his own counsel.
Go ahead.
As for Samaria, her king is cut off as a foam upon the water.
Just like foam in the waters is gone, and you're going to be gone too. That king, and he was destroyed. Verse 8. Is that it? Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you. Let's go to Ezekiel. Let's go to Ezekiel. Because false worship was going on wholesale. And you saw the demise of those 10 tribes. Commonly referred to as the lost 10 tribes of Israel. That were taken out by the Assyrians in 721, 722 BC. Scattered throughout Africa, throughout the world. Ezekiel 8 and verse 5. And when you're there, you can go ahead. Because again, that false worship has spread wholesale. Even in the temple. Now this, let me say this, let me preference this. Give you context. This is Ezekiel who, this is after Israel's gone into captivity to Babylon. But he's having an image or a vision in his head about why they went into captivity. This is Ezekiel 8 and verse 5. When you there, go ahead.
Then said he unto me, Son of man, lift up thine eyes now the way toward the north. So I lifted up mine eyes the way toward the north, and behold, northward at the gate of the altar, this image of jealousy in the entry.
So right in the temple, they had built an idol. An image of jealousy. God is a jealous God. And right in the temple that he had built, they make an idol. Verse 6.
He said furthermore unto me, Son of man, seest thou what they do? Even the great abominations that the house of Israel committed here, that I should go far off from my sanctuary.
Go ahead.
But turn thee yet again, and thou shalt see greater abominations.
So this isn't the only thing that was done. They didn't just build an idol right in the entrance. What else did they do?
And he brought me to the door of the court. And when I looked, behold, a hole in the wall.
So it's like a hole in the wall. You've seen it in movies. You probably did it. My wife told me, she said she had a hole in the wall. She could see right in her brother's room. Same type of hole. It's a spy hole. But go ahead.
Then said he unto me, Son of man, dig now in the wall, And when I had digged in the wall, behold, a door. And he said unto me, Go in and behold the wicked abominations that they do here.
So see what Israel is actually all about. Go ahead.
So I went in and saw, and behold, every form of creepy things, an abominable beast, and all the idols of the house of Israel, portrayed upon the wall round about.
So he sees these images of these false gods. Go ahead.
And there stood before them 70 men of the ancients of the house of Israel.
So you see the elders, the 70 elders, what are they doing at that time?
And in the midst of them stood Jaazaniah, the son of Shaphan, with every man his censer in his hand, and a thick cloud of incense went up.
Same, just like Nadab and Abihu, who burned strange incense. They are actually burning incense to another god. These are the elders. We saw what the kings did. And if the leaders are doing this, if the leaders, the ones that are supposed to be instructing the people, are perpetuating this, the people don't have hope. Verse 12.
Then said he unto me, Son of man, hast thou seen what the ancients of the house of Israel do in the dark?
You see what these ancients do in the dark? It's out in the open now. But go ahead.
Every man in the chambers of his imagery. For they say, The Lord seeth us not. The Lord hath forsaken the earth.
But he sits high and looks low. He sees everything. He sees what's going on. Verse 13.
He said also unto me, Turn thee yet again, and thou shalt see greater abominations that they do.
So there's worse things going on. Go ahead.
Then he brought me to the door of the gate of the Lord's house, which was toward the north. And behold, there sat women weeping for Tammuz.
Instead of being joyful for what God is doing, they weeping for this false god. The Greek Adonis, that's who Tammuz is. They weeping for him, crying for him, who is no God. Verse 15.
Then he said unto me, Hast thou seen this, O son of man? Turn thee yet again, and thou shalt see greater abominations than these. And he brought me into the inner court of the Lord's house. And behold, at the door of the temple of the Lord, between the porch and the altar, were about 25 men, with their backs toward the temple of the Lord, and their faces toward the east. And they worshiped the sun toward the east.
Just like every other primitive people on the planet, worshiping the sun. Now they're worshiping the sun, and this is the people who God manifested himself unto. So they turned their back toward the temple, away from the temple, and they worshiping the sun. Verse 17.
Then he said unto me, Hast thou seen this, O son of man? Is it a light thing to the house of Judah that they commit the abominations which they commit here?
So is this light that they do this, that they worship falsely? Go ahead.
For they have filled the land with violence, and have returned to provoke me to anger. And lo, they put the branch to their nose.
Go ahead.
Therefore will I also deal in fury. Mine eyes shall not spare, neither will I have pity. And though they cry in mine ears with a loud voice, yet will I not hear them.
How could he hear you? You cry because of your condition, because of impoverishment, because of slavery, because of exploitation and oppression. But you worship falsely. So stop crying. He said, therefore I will also deal in my fury with this people. Mine eyes shall not spare, neither will I have pity. And though they cry in mine ears with a loud voice, yet will I not hear. Why should he hear us if we worship him falsely? Jeremiah, the 44th chapter. Just seeing and you see the demise of this people, and you see the mindset of the people. We are stiff-necked for real. This is another prophet coming to the people. Ezekiel, in his days, he laid a certain amount of days on one side in the street for everybody to see, eating dung, showing how many years Israel, the northern tribe, or the northern kingdom had went astray. Then 40 years for the years that Judah had been gone astray. This is Jeremiah. He's talking to some rebellious Israelites who have tried to escape and gone into Egypt. Let's go to Jeremiah 44th chapter and verse 1. And when you're there, you can go ahead.
The word that came to Jeremiah concerning all the Jews which dwelled in the land of Egypt, which dwelled at Migdol, at Tapenaz, and at North, in the country of Petros, saying, Thus saith the Lord of hosts, the God of Israel, Ye have seen all the evil that are brought upon Jerusalem, upon all the cities of Judah, and behold, this day there are desolation and no man dwelleth therein.
Go ahead. So he said, you've seen this. You've seen the desolation that I brought. Go ahead. Because why did he bring it though?
Because of their wickedness, which they have committed to provoke me to anger.
Go ahead.
And that they went to burn incense and to serve other gods, whom they knew not, neither they, yea, nor their father.
But go ahead. What did he do in his mercy?
Howbeit, I sent unto you all my servants the prophets, rising early and sending them, saying, O do not this abominable thing that I hate. But they hearken not, nor incline their ear to turn from their wickedness, to burn no incense unto other gods.
He constantly sent these prophets, and they killed the prophets. They imprisoned the prophets. Jeremiah was put in prison. They constantly did this. And this was what God was doing out of his mercy. Let's skip down to verse 7.
Therefore, now thus said the Lord, the God of hosts, the God of Israel, wherefore commit ye this great evil against your souls, to cut off from you man and woman, child and suckling out of Judah, to leave you none to remain.
So why do this? Why worship falsely? Why not hearken to God if it's going to mean your demise? Verse 8.
And that ye provoke me unto wrath with the works of your hands, burning incense unto other gods in the land of Egypt, whether ye be gone to dwell, that ye might cut yourselves off, and that ye might be a curse and a reproach among all the nations of the earth.
So just like back in the old days, they wanted to go back in Egypt then. These people are spiritually and physically in Egypt. It says, in that ye provoke me unto wrath with the works of your hands, burning incense unto other gods in the land of Egypt. We are doing the same thing as a people today. In Brazil, in America, in England, where all the lands that we've been scattered. We live in these same lands and serve the same false gods as the people that we are surrounded with. The same exact thing. And just how Jeremiah came to these people and told them of their faults, he was looked upon as somebody that was crazy. Somebody saying that we shouldn't be doing that today is looked upon as crazy. In the same exact way. That's why I said, see yourself in the scriptures. He said, now you provoke me into wrath with the works of your hands. Why are you doing that? Why are you putting a Christmas tree in your house? Why are you looking for Easter eggs and bunny rabbits? You sound crazy now to say that to somebody. But go ahead, verse 9.
Have ye forgotten the wickedness of your father, and the wickedness of the kings of Judah?
Why do you think we're in the condition we're in? Go ahead.
And the wickedness of their wives, and your own wickedness.
Go ahead.
And the wickedness of your wives, which they have committed in the land of Judah, and in the streets of Jerusalem.
Because the women in this instance were in some big time false worship. But the men were condoning it. So they're just as guilty. But go ahead. Verse 15?
Verse 15.
Thank you.
Then all the men which knew that their wives had burned incense unto other gods, and all the women that stood by, a great multitude, even all the people that dwelt in the land of Egypt and Patros, answered Jeremiah, saying,
so they had a saying for him. See, these weren't like Job, who corrected his wife. And I'm not picking on women anyway, because women can correct men. But in this instance, there were the wives that were dealing with some type of incense burning to these gods more so than the men, and the men weren't saying anything. So again, they're just as guilty. But let's see what they said to Jeremiah. You see the mindset of these people. Go ahead.
Verse 16. As for the words that thou hast spoken unto us in the name of the Lord.
So all that you said in the name of the Lord, go ahead.
We will not hearken unto thee.
We won't even listen to you.
But we will.
It's not like in the days when they said all that the Lord has said we will do and be obedient. They didn't even lie like the forefathers did. Rather, they just said, we're not going to hearken unto you. We're not listening to you. Go ahead.
But we will certainly do whatsoever thing goeth forth out of our own mouth.
We're going to do what we want to do. Go ahead.
To burn incense unto the Queen of Heaven.
We're going to worship this Queen of Heaven. Go ahead.
And to pour out drink offerings unto her.
We're going to pour out drink offerings to her. Not to God. We're not going to make offerings unto God. Go ahead.
As we have done, we and our fathers, our kings and our princes, in the cities of Judah and in the streets of Jerusalem. For then had we plenty of victuals, and were well and saw no evil.
Now, you know, that's just like when they said we ate the cucumbers and we were prospering in Egypt. They had the same kind of foolish mindset. You were a slave in Egypt. Now you're an outcast in somebody else's land, and the Lord is instructing you, and you refuse to be instructed. You refuse it. And then go equate any type of prosperity you have to worshiping a false God. That's stiff-necked, but go ahead.
But since we left off to burn incense to the Queen of Heaven,
and since we stopped worshiping this Queen of Heaven, go ahead.
And to pour out drink offerings unto her, we have wanted all things and have been consumed by the sword and by the famine.
It's because we haven't been worshiping the Queen of Heaven. That's why we're in the condition we in. See, and that's people's mindset today. Verse 19, you couldn't tell somebody, you try to tell somebody, or one of our people, hey, you know, you need to stop doing that. Or even talk about how it's pagan. They would worry about what would happen to them if they actually stopped practicing that tradition. They think something actually bad would happen to them. Because that's the mindset. We in darkness as a people. But go ahead.
And when we burn incense to the Queen of Heaven, and poured out drink offerings unto her, did we make her cakes to worship her, and pour out drink offerings unto her without our men? Then Jeremiah said unto all the people, to the men and to the women, to all the people which had given him that answer, saying, the incense that ye burned in the cities of Judah, and in the streets of Jerusalem, ye and your fathers, your kings and your princes, and the people of the land, did not the Lord remember them, and came and not into his mind?
So he's telling them that they thinking, or their logic is backwards. You're not in a bad position because you didn't worship the Queen of Heaven. You've been in a bad condition because you did worship the Queen of Heaven. Verse 22.
So that the Lord could no longer bear.
And he couldn't deal with you any longer. Go ahead.
Because of the evil of your doing. And because of the abominations which you have committed. Therefore is your land a desolation, and an astonishment, and a curse, without an inhabitant, as at this day.
And that's why we're in the condition we're in today. Because of false worship. It says, and you can turn it to Deuteronomy. Let's just say Deuteronomy. For number 12, let's just say Deuteronomy. Deuteronomy 28. So that the Lord could no longer bear you. He couldn't deal with you any longer. Because of the evil of your doings. That's why you're in astonishment. That's why we're in astonishment. That's why we feel the ghettos and the prisons. That's why we're on the bottom of the economic ladder in society. That's why we're the last hired in the first fire. That's why we don't know who we are. That's why violence fills our communities. That's why we suffer illnesses and diseases more than anybody else. That's why our kids are in the condition that they're in. Totally lost. Totally lost. Deuteronomy, it should say again, Deuteronomy, the 28th chapter, and the 15th verse. Because he told us how we find out how we got in our condition. Again, because of false worship. We sit here in this strange land with these strange names. No respect, no wealth, no sense of consciousness of who we are because of false worship. Deuteronomy 28 and verse 15. Deuteronomy 28 and verse 15. And when you're there, you can go ahead.
But it shall come to pass, if thou wilt not hearken unto the voice of the Lord thy God, to observe to do all his commandments and his statutes, which I command thee this day, that all these curses shall come upon thee and overtake thee.
So if you refuse to take heed to what I'm telling you, you're going to be cursed. Verse 16.
Cursed shalt thou be in the city, and cursed shalt thou be in the field.
No matter if you move from Mississippi up to Chicago. You was cursed down in Mississippi picking cotton. You're going to be cursed in the city of Chicago. Verse 17.
Cursed shall be thy basket and thy store. Cursed shall be the fruit of thy body and the fruit of thy land, the increase of thy kind and the flocks of thy sheep.
You can't move from it wherever you're at, in the city, in the field. And whatever you do is going to be cursed. Cursed shall be the fruit of thy body, so your children are going to be cursed. I work with children. Our children are truly cursed. If I could just sit down with you and talk about some of the stories that I hear, you would know the children are cursed. And you know they're cursed too because they're the ones breaking in your house. They're the ones that you can't say anything to on the street. Cursed shall be the fruit of thy body and the fruit of thy land, the increase of thy kind and the flocks of thy sheep. Verse 19.
Cursed shalt thou be when thou comest in.
So when you're coming in, you're cursed. What about when you're going out?
And cursed shalt thou be when thou goest out.
When you're leaving, you're cursed. You cursed all the way around. Can't get away from it. Let's skip down to verse 27. When you're there, go ahead.
The Lord will spite thee with the bots of Egypt, and with the emeralds, and with the scab, and with the itch, whereof thou canst not be healed.
You're not going to be healed. You're going to be brought to destruction. just like that mighty nation was at that time. You are going to be destroyed. Verse 28.
The Lord shall smite thee with madness and blindness and astonishment of heart.
And all that comes with the stress of being an exploited and an oppressed and an enslaved people, you're going to feel it. The Lord shall smite thee with madness and blindness and astonishment of heart. Fear and blindness. You think about the madness of a person's mind who jumps off a ship into the ocean, a ship that's followed by sharks, because they are so distraught about the condition of being enslaved. You think about what happens in our communities is madness. How we treat one another and how we view ourselves. The Lord shall smite thee with madness and blindness. We are blind people in total darkness and astonishment of heart. Always fearful because we have no control over what's going to happen tomorrow. Verse 29.
And thou shalt grope at noonday, as the blind gropeth in dark, and thou shalt not prosper in thy way.
You're not going to prosper as a people. You might have your Oprahs, you might have your Michael Jordans, but as a people, the masses are not prospering. Matter of fact, they're going backwards. But go ahead.
And thou shalt be only oppressed and spoiled evermore, and no man shall save thee.
Go ahead.
Thou shalt betroth a wife, and another man shall lie with her. Thou shalt build a house, and thou shalt not dwell therein. Thou shalt plant a vineyard, and shall not gather the grapes thereof.
So nothing you have, not that you build, not even your wife is going to be yours. And this is what happened to us in slavery. Again, I thank God that he manifested himself unto me. He also showed me who I was. I saw my condition in the scriptures. Again, see yourself in the scripture. This happened to us, to our people. Your wife's going to be taken in front of your eyes, and there's nothing you can do about it. And lie with another man. Thou shalt build an house, and thou shalt not dwell therein. You're going to work. You're going to plant a vineyard, but you're not going to prosper. This country was made a superpower on our backs, on our last backs. Verse 31, go ahead.
Thine ox shall be slain before thine eye, and thou shalt not eat thereof. Thine ass shall be violently taken away from before thy face, and shall not be restored to thee. Thy sheep shall be given unto thine enemies, and thou shalt have none to rescue them.
So that's what happens to you when you are conquered as a people. Your wife's taken away. Men are emasculated when they're conquered. Everything you have is taken from you. That's what happens to you. What about your children? Are your children yours when you're conquered? Go ahead.
Thy sons and thy daughters shall be given unto another people, and thine eyes shall look and fail with longing for them all the day long, and there shall be no might in thine hand.
So the sons and the daughters that you have, they're not yours. Another people takes them and sells them. I've seen advertisements. Children, men, women, and children for sale. I read accounts in American slavery as it is, where the slave trader talks about how they would take a baby off the mama's breast and sell it. That sons and that daughters shall be given unto another people. And thine eyes shall look and fail with longing for them all the day long, and there shall be no might in thine hand. Therefore you have madness and astonishment of heart. But let's go to verse 36, and when you're there, go ahead.
The Lord shall bring thee and thy king, which thou shalt set over thee, into a nation which neither thou nor thy fathers have known. And there shalt thou serve other gods, wood and stone.
So the one that was supposed to be king, hey, taking him. He's going to be taken. It said, the Lord shall bring thee and thy king, you and your king, which thou shalt set over thee unto a nation which neither thou nor thy fathers have known. If you really think about it, you go back into lineage, there are kings and princes in lineage that are janitors. And it says, and there thou shalt serve other gods in that nation, gods of wood and stone. That's what we're doing right now. We got into our condition because of false worship, and the Lord said, you know what, I can't bear this people any longer. And you are going to serve those gods that you want to serve so bad, only you're going to do it in captivity. You're not going to do it in my land. Keep reading.
Verse 37. And thou shalt become an astonishment, a proverb, and a byword among all nations, whether the Lord shall lead thee. Thou shalt carry much seed out into the field, and shalt gather but little in, for the locust shall consume it. Thou shalt plant vineyards and dress them, but shall neither drink of the wine nor gather the grapes, for the worms shall eat them.
Let's skip down all the way down to 63. Again, seeing how we got in this position. Verse 63. When you there, go ahead.
And it shall come to pass that as the Lord rejoiced over you to do you good, and to multiply you, so the Lord will rejoice over you to destroy you, and to bring you to naught. Ye shall be plucked from off the land, whither thou goest to possess it.
So I'm going to bring you to nothing, and I'm going to kick you out of the land. Go ahead, verse 64. And while you're in these other places that you scattered, what you going to be doing? Go ahead.
And the Lord shall scatter thee among all people, from one end of the earth even unto the other. And there shalt thou serve other gods, which neither thou nor thy fathers have known, even wood and stone.
All these false gods that we as a people go after wholesale, these are gods that have their root, at least the names. These are European people's gods that we worship. It said, the Lord shall scatter thee among all people.